have structure. Keep looking at your causes you to relapse. Keep looking at your wins, because that's what's going to make a difference. That's going to help you finally break free from this destructive habit.
What is going on, Reboot Team? I am with somebody very, very special, somebody who I've personally wanted to speak to for a while regarding his reboot process. He's been with us for a while and certainly no stranger to rebooting, but I am with somebody that I think has a lot to share and a lot of wisdom to offer. I'm here with my man Josiah. How you doing today, sir?
Oh, Chris, I'm doing well. Another day. Wonderful day, actually. Count as a win. For any listeners or viewers out there, wins are important.
Yeah,
Even if you don't have anything, find something.
Absolutely. Those little wins, they add up. We're all about like not just counting days, but making the days count. So I'm glad. And we'll definitely dive into that in a little bit. But I kind of want to get to know you a little bit. I mean, first things first, how did you first discover the program?
Well, Chris, that's an interesting story. I'll make it detailed or brief as best I can. Those who are in Reboot already know, and you, I bet, already know, I suffered with, or still suffer, kind of the out of control sexual behavior for about going on 20 years. Didn't discover the Reboot program until 2 years ago through Facebook. Surprising or not, Facebook was when I first heard about JK, and I've never heard his podcast at all. At that time, I expressed interest because at that time it was slips and relapses were pretty strong in some areas, and some areas they weren't. I was contacted by GT, love the guy. At the time, couldn't really do it, so I said, well, not this time, maybe some other time. And then a couple years went by, found myself in a relationship that was getting extremely serious, so chose the time in about 2022, late 2021, 2022 to start, when Reboot called me again, trying to see if I was interested. Decided to jump headfirst into the deep end, as it were, and that's how I got started at Reboot, and it's been touch and go for some time. Got halfway, a year later, as I look back, got halfway through the implementation videos and modules, learned quite a bit more about how to reboot and a little bit more about myself, trying to keep into the morning routine with changing jobs, and everything else has been very, let's just say, very difficult than I'd like to admit.
Sure. I mean, like anybody who says that any type of radical change is going to be a simple 1, 2, 3 fix is scamming you, right?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
So the fact that you spoke to that, I think, is really important. It won't always be easy, but with a structure and with a system, it can at least be simple as far as something followable goes. So, but I do want to know about the moment when, so there you are on Facebook and you discover JK and the reboot program. What was the moment like where you see it and you're kind of just like, you know what, it's time?
I think the time when I saw it was, I'll share a little personal. I've been still struggling with relapses every so once in a while. With my work, it's been getting better, trying to keep that steady pace. It didn't really click until I knew I was getting serious about soon to be fiance. And I'm just like, you know what? Every other method I've tried is not working. I don't know what people are talking about. Like, nothing against religion, but religion groups, they say, oh, this works, and just do this and just do that. No. Even if you do all the things they're telling you, which is only 2 things, no, it's not. It's not like you go. It's the same thing with an alcoholic. You go to an alcoholic and say, all you have to do is stop drinking, or a drug addict, all you got to do is stop taking drugs. And how well does that work for them? I can tell you right now, it doesn't work. As many people who've been alcoholics, my best friend used to be an alcoholic, can tell you that just doesn't work.
No, it's. I'm glad you spoke to that, and that we're not just treating a behavior; we're treating a person, right? It's a really like holistic approach. So it's one thing to say like, hey, just don't act out using the internet anymore, but it's one thing to hear that, but another thing to be like walked through as to how, like, specifically to the nuanced thing in a way that's relevant and matters to you and your lifestyle. That's where the group kind of comes into play, kind of meets you where you're at. So you join the group And I'm curious as to what your experience has been like thus far in the Facebook group.
Oh, I think the Facebook group, my experience was it well, is really good. I enjoy having the conversations. Honestly, I'd heard the statistics that 60 to 70% of men deal with this out of control behavior, but it didn't really click. I mean, you see these statistics, but it doesn't really click until you actually see, oh yeah, I'm struggling with it. Oh yeah, this person's struggling with it. Oh, this person's struggling with it. And it's just like, okay, a little bit more of a big problem than statistics actually make it out to be.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we say it in the group all the time. Like, the more personal something is, the more universal it actually is. It's like, I remember when I first joined the group, it was like, I mean, it sounds a little cliche, but it's like, oh my goodness, like I'm actually not alone. Like, people actually
Yeah.
get it. You know what I mean?
Well, and then when you talk to, then you have a chance to influence like your circle. So whatever you learn, if you know somebody, let's say your best friend or friends who aren't on this program, who are struggling with it, you can share something of your experience with them. And through Reboot, I was able to help a couple guys who are in my own circle who aren't doing this program, who are already dealing with it. I won't mention names. One of them got caught by his significant other, and they've been dealing with it for last few years. And so I had a chance to talk to at least him and figure out where he was going with that, what led him to start. And so through the Facebook group, with those interactions and the calls and everything, it's put things into perspective a little bit more. Instead of looking at it from one lens, you look at it from a neutral logic sense.
Mm. I love that where there's no judgment in the group. It's funny because like I've heard someone say that the Facebook group is kind of like a dojo where you like train like that active listening muscle and that judgment free sort of feedback and like open sharing on your end so that when you find yourself in a real life circumstance you already have that muscle memory built where you can hear somebody out who's going through a tough situation and not only hear them out but counsel them in a way that is relevant to what they're going through. So I'm sincerely, I'm really, really proud of you, man. I know conversations like that when it comes to this type of compulsive behavior, let's just be real. I mean, they're not easy. They're not ever like the most super comfortable thing. They're not like dinner table type of conversation.
Well, especially with your significant other. Just say this. Let's be honest. Women don't know what this problem is. They may say, "Oh, we understand," but more of that lip speech until they actually start viewing it themselves. And even then, they don't fully understand. My soon to be fiance has viewed this stuff before, probably more times than she cares to admit. My friend I counseled, his wife has been in a accountability group with women who have either viewed it or have husbands or boyfriends who have viewed it. And I'm glad you mentioned that there's no judgment or accountability, not accountability, no judgment in the group, because when I've talked to my friend, he said, yeah, she's talking to these women who have dealt with it, and there is no judgment there. She's trying to have accountability on that. And to be honest, I think that's partly Reboot and partly the accountability structure that people are starting to figure out.
Yeah, it's great, and that accountability structure, it's like we said, it's huge as far as what we're trying to do. Because like we said, it's like if someone comes to the group today and says like, "Hey guys, I had a slip," it's not like we're gonna like, "Oh, you suck, you're all the way back at day one, you blew it," It's just like, okay, well, what led to the slip? What were you feeling? What tools could you employ next time? Like we're trying to find the data, right? Like that's how you're going to track your progress. It's like over time, it's like if there's a slip, it's like, okay, this isn't where I want to be right now, but what data can I pull from this that I can then apply to a similar circumstance in the future? It's like getting yourself prepped for, what's to come. So we can go all day with that, but that non-judgmental piece, like it's huge. So I'm glad you got a lot out of that. That's really sick, man, and are clearly applying it. But you also mentioned the calls in the group as well. I'm curious as to, what your experience has been like with the coaching calls.
When I first started, I thought the coaching calls, I'm like, what's this about? So went to Dr. Rankin's call was really good. I thought was really good when I first started. So was Coach Milan's, and remind me her name, Dr. Eastman. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Eastman's call was really good. And for a while, I was going at least once or twice, or all three, if I could help it. When I got my new job, it kind of petered out to none. Then towards the end, started going back to it because I'm like, okay, time to get back. But in regards to experience, I really thought the coaching calls were really insightful. Negative emotion calls, how to deal with negative emotions, neuroprogramming call, Dr. Rankin's trauma call. Is that right?
Yeah, Dr. Eastman was our trauma-informed recovery coach. That was her specialty.
That is really insightful because you don't know what leads you to act out sexually until you re-examine what's going on, what started you down that path. Now, there could be something that started you originally down that path and then it evolved to something else, or it could be just a bunch of little things like I feel inadequate or nobody likes me or whatever negative emotion you're going through at the time. All of that could be a trigger. And now, as you're trying to reboot, you're starting to realize, okay, this is all that was starting, even though I forgot about it. And I think those coaching calls are really helpful. In fact, I would have liked to have a private one or two times if I could have afforded it. I think that's what I'll miss when I'm on my little 2-month thing without being at Reboot is the coaching calls.
Yeah.
Because those are really good, really insightful.
I'm glad you got a lot out of the calls, man. That's really, really awesome. As far as some of the tools that you've learned along the way, I am curious as to which tools, techniques, things like that have proved to be, the most beneficial to you.
Out of all the tools, out of the 10 tools or so, JK and you guys have put together, I'd say the relapse prevention checklist is really a beneficial one. The wind wall also, but I think the relapse prevention checklist is actually more beneficial because you can track, hey, what caused me to look at the X-ray material today? What started me looking at? Oh my. Okay.
Yep, you kind of like take yourself down that situation and, like we said, look at it from an objective lens. Like, garner the data. Like, what happened? What led you there? What were you feeling? What were you thinking about? And what can you do now that you've gone through that experience? What have you learned from your environment? What have you learned about your triggers? What have you learned about yourself? Again, the whole point in, the rebooting process is, not beating yourself up anymore. You know what I mean? Like, just looking at it from an objective lens.
Well, and if you keep beating yourself up, you're gonna keep going back to it.
There it is.
I liked how JK mentioned it's not the pornography that's the issue. It is the access of it coming after you in the social media, in YouTube, in everything else. And I agree with that, but I also think that it's a wrong mindset too. It's not just the pornography that is the problem. It's the negative emotions that come with it. As part of the human condition is the X-rated imagery. That's part of the human condition. It's something that we have to live with. It's how we handle it, how we not necessarily avoid it, because on the internet you can't avoid it. It's everywhere you look, or it finds you. If you're not looking for it, it finds you. So,
but you raise a good point, though. I mean, like, it's completely the human condition in that we can't control when we're going to be exposed to something. We can't control when stuff is going to happen that's less than ideal, let's say. But we can control how we react. We can control our actions as far as what happens next, And that is where the rewiring process comes into play, where it's like, oh, here is a particular thing that in the past may have triggered me to act out in an unhealthy way. But now, through the tools and through the accountability and through the system, I've learned how to take this feeling and do something else with it. Whether it is using a tool or reaching out to somebody or doing something else. Like, it's having your brain work for you instead of against you. So, yeah, what are some other tools that you've learned, during your time in the program?
The win wall has been really helpful. I mean, I don't usually have a lot of wins outside of got up, went to work. Um, but that has been helpful tracking the wins. And I think tracking your wins is extremely important because the world tells you to track your, oh, you failed at this. How could you? Oh, you did a relapse again. Oh, well, you're shit. All that negativity not just comes from your own mind, it comes from the world because in certain circles, if they hear about, well, you looked at pornography again, well, you're a lousy human being, you should just go kill yourself. Some stuff like that. If you don't track your wins, your wins, then you're only going to focus on that negativity that comes from not just your own mind, but from the world around you, from certain social groups, including if you're religious, in your religion group as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, you raise a good point in the fact, well, first of all, the win wall is a great tool as far as, yeah, tracking your wins. That is what you are intentionally and decisively focusing on. Like, that's your target. It's not just about don't slip, don't slip, don't slip. It's like, what are we doing to cultivate a lifestyle where the wins are the target? Like, that's what we're looking to chase. That's the thing we're going to put on the pedestal. It's not just the porn group. So, yeah, I'm really, really glad. Not enough people give the win wall credit, so I'm glad you spoke to that, man. But with that, man, I want to ask you this, because you dove into it a little bit before, and I'm curious to see how further we can go, because why not? You had mentioned that you were talking to somebody in the past about, somebody who had struggled with this particular set of behaviors, whether it's porn or some other sexually compulsive behavior. I'm curious, having learned what you've learned and having experienced what you have to this point, if there's somebody that might be watching this or listening to this and is kind of on the fence as far as what to do and how to do it, just struggling in a way that you and I know about, just struggling in silence, not knowing where to turn, not knowing how to start, not knowing what to do. To somebody like that, is there anything that comes to mind that you might like to share with that person?
Actually, yes. One, I've been where you are. I've had those dark feelings, even suicidal tendencies when it got worse. At the worst point, I was at a 6. No, not a 6, a 5, approaching a 6. And I've been where you are, brother. I know what's going on. Get on to elevatedrecovery.com or listen to JK's podcast. Even if you look at Elevate Recovery and says, oh, this is bogus, I don't want to do this. Listen to JK. He knows what he's talking about. Listen to the podcast if you don't want to do Elevated Recovery just yet. Even if you're on Reboot, listen to the podcast anyway, because that's a good resource right there. But also speak up. Contact somebody you know and tell them, hey, I'm going through this, because if you suffer in silence, it's going to get worse. The urge to relapse, the urge to go to darker stuff like bestiality, rape fantasies, even child exploitation will get stronger, because those are some of the darker areas. Don't go there. You will get there eventually, but don't go there. And if you do get there, speak up, because there are brothers out here that can help you. Contact Chris, or even if you don't know his name, contact GT. Just contact somebody you trust and tell them what you're going through, because suffering in silence is not healthy, and you need somebody to know about what you're struggling with. If you have a girlfriend or married, I disagree with Reboot Hero on this. Tell them, because it's better that you tell them rather than them finding out. And yes, Reboot Hero 3 is right. They will not respect you, but they will respect you less if they have to find out, and they'll respect you more if you're honest with them. Because keep one thing in mind, they probably already figured it out. With you isolating yourself or getting angry for some reason, disappearing for hours on end, they probably already figured it out. Your family as well. They're just not going to say anything. So if you tell somebody you trust, your significant other, or just a brother, they will respect you more because you had the courage to be vulnerable and tell them.
Yeah.
Get into elevated recovery if you haven't already.
Yeah, I mean, with all that said, I guess you beat me to my next question. I was eventually going to ask, would you recommend this program?
Yes, for at least the 90 days, yes. The first year, yes.
Yeah.
If you want to make it 4 years or 5 years, do that too. I'm sure they would love to have you. That's what I'd like to do. Brother, do it.
Dude, thank you so much, and I appreciate you just sharing your heart, sharing your experience, and like we alluded to earlier, there's a lot of nuance to this world, when it comes to, of course, the addiction world, but this particular branch of it, and it can be very touchy, and it can be very taboo. It can be very, like we said, tough to talk about. It's not exactly a topic that's brought up at the dinner table. However, yeah, I mean, like Josiah alluded to, like there is a group of men from all around the world that get it, you know. And Josiah is one of those guys. He is a dude who has shown strides in his own reboot process, and I feel good just to have been, just like a small part of it, and a small part of that facilitation, man. Like you getting your new job, and you prospering and focusing more intentionally in your relationship, and I'm really, really proud of you, man, and particularly the bit about taking what you've learned to help somebody else. I think that's really noble of you. I think that's really awesome.
Thanks, Chris. I've really enjoyed being part of the program, and I'm a little sad that I have to leave for a hiatus for a while. I'll be back.
You will, man.
I plan to be back.
Dude, that's sick. But before we say goodbye, any final words for anybody who might be watching or listening?
Enjoy your reboot. It will be hard, guys. I still struggle sometimes with getting through my reboot, and I'm still with you on this one, guys. It's tough. JK's right. Have structure. Keep looking at your causes you to relapse. Keep looking at your wins, because that's what's going to make a difference. That's going to help you finally break free from this destructive habit.
Keep on logging in that data, guys. You are so worth recovering, and this group will help you get there. So thank you, Josiah. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your journey, and thank you for sharing it all. I appreciate you, man. All the best to you.